it's always so confusing as to where the live stream actually starts going live. It's because there's a lag, and I don't know. You never know. And that's why the beginning of live streams are always so dumb. You always see the person just staring at the screen or something. However, that is not particularly important. So what I want to do is back up a tiny bit and review what Narada has been telling Pracetas. Pracetas, the brothers, they finished their famous austerities in the water. Then they enjoyed their marriage to Marisha, produced a child named Priyavrata, and then they went to finish off their life learning from the sage Jajali. And he taught them several things that were quite important. They practiced them, and while they were practicing them, Narada came to see how they were doing. So they asked Narada to give them some last bit of instruction to like push it over the top. And so backing up to a little bit in what he's been saying, what Narada has been telling them, he says the real measure of desirability in any attainment is how well it serves the self. But Hari is even more dear because he is the ultimate self of all selves. So the idea Narada is saying is the real measure of desirability in anything is how well it pleases Hari, because Hari is the self, the true self. Watering the root of a tree satisfies the whole tree. So the real way to please the self in all aspects of the self is to serve the root of the self, which is Hari. Watering the root of a tree satisfies the whole tree, trunk, branches, and leaves. Feeding the stomach distributes nourishment throughout the whole body. That which serves the infallible serves everyone. Now, in the next bit, he gives analogies to explain how the root of the tree is related to the branches and the leaves. How Hari is related to the individuals, it's related to their manifestations that they create in the tangible world. So he gives the example of the sun's relationship to rain, and also the sun's relationship to light, and to darkness, actually, to shadow. So he says the sun creates evaporation and condensation. Oh, and he also says the earth produces living things, or moving things, even though it doesn't move. The sun creates evaporation and condensation, and all things grow from and return to the earth. Excuse me. The qualified tactile world has the same relationship with Hari. This world comes from the transcendent super self, just as sunlight comes immediately from the sun. So this is explaining the relationship between the root self and the extension of the self, which is this individual. And then the extension of the individual, which is into their body and the way that they affect the world. It's similar to the sun producing rain and snow or clouds or nighttime. The sun can even produce nighttime, because nighttime is the opposite side of the sun. Just as our powers of action and perception seem lost when we sleep but resume when we awake, this world never actually disappears. It simply loses its distinct tangibility. So the illusion of destruction, if something is real, if the root is real, how can it produce something which is unreal? There's only an illusion of unreality. The realness is there, but because things are changing all the time, they seem to have no reality. They seem to fall out of reality. So leaves seem to fall off the tree, but then the leaves come back. The tree doesn't actually lose its leaves. The sun's heat and movement create and destroy the day, the night, and the clouds. Similarly, the power of the Supreme Person is the source of the qualities that compose this world. Now, this one maybe is where we start today. Yeah. Now we start with new stuff. So now with this new material, he's going to kind of put a closure on those analogies. So let's see what he says. Aparna wants my YouTube link on Maya. You know what I always do, Aparna? I just Google. I don't even look through my YouTube channel. I just Google because it's so easy because YouTube is Google. So you just do Victocara Maya YouTube in the Google search engine, and I guarantee you it'll come up. All right. So here's the next text. Tenaikam atmanam ashesha dehinam kalam pradhanam purusham paresham sutejasa dhvastaguna pravaham atmaika bhavena bhajadham adha. So what does that mean? He's saying, thus, one being manifests unlimited embodiments. Right? This is what the sun creates a lot of things. It's just the sun, but it has now infinite sun rays. And those sun rays have heat and light. And that heat and light interacts with other things and does stuff. And actually the sun even created the other things that the heat and light interact with, because the sun's gravity is pulling together all these clumps into planets and so forth. So by this analogy, he's saying, see, this one being, the sun, produces many, many other beings as extensions of itself, as dehina. Dehina means the extension of the self, or the instantiation of the self. Typically, dehi means a body, but a body is an instance of a self. So, tain aika atma, the eka atma, the one being, has ashesha dehi. One being, many, many bodies. And that this is what he's been saying in the analogies. The sun, it actually makes rain, snow, and those things make rivers and oceans, and those things make valleys and mountains. Or the tree, it makes branches, leaves, fruits, seeds, new trees, flowers. Just the one root, the one tree makes so many things. So he's saying, thus, tena, in this way, eka atmanam ashesha dehinam. One substance makes many aspects, visible aspects of itself. Thus one being manifests unlimited embodiments, just as the one Supreme Master has inherent powers of personhood, time, and the substrate for creativity, which interact to manifest and dissipate the unlimited creations. So here he's saying that the Parameshwara is the short version of the Parameshwara, the Supreme Master. The Supreme Master has inherent powers, swatejasa, like the sun has tejasa, which is the sunlight. The Pareshwara has swatejas, inherent, not acquired, not developed, not discovered, not evolved, but inherent power. Just like light has an inherent power to illuminate. It's inseparable, it's the dharma of the light. Similarly, beings have inherent power. So the Parameshwara has swatejas, an inherent power, which should be understood to have three aspects to it: Kala, Pradhana, and Purusha. Purusha means personhood. So Purusha is all the people that exist. From the one Paramesh come Ashesh Purusha. Ekatma Paramesh Ashesh Purusha. From the one singular supreme person, therefore there's, by the swatejas, the inherent power of that person, it generates many, many, many different people. So that's one aspect. It's called the Purusha Shakti. Then the other one is the Pradhan Shakti. Pradhan means the substrate for creativity. What the heck is a substrate? A substrate is like a medium, something that you use build something. So, like if you're a painter and you go and you buy a box of paints and a canvas, that's your substrate for creativity. If you're a musician and you buy an instrument, then the instrument's your substrate for creativity. So the Supreme has this power called Pradhan, which is the substrate for creativity. It's the canvas and the paint that the Purushas are going to use to create their embodiments and to do their things in, to create their lives and their activities in. So this is also known as Prakriti. Prakriti is synonymous with Pradhan. And then the third thing is Kala. Kala is typically known as time. Right? So just as the Supreme Master has inherent powers of personhood, time, and the substrate for creativity. So what happens is, what is time? Time is the ability for a cause to produce an effect. That's what time is. It's just the ability for things to change. This is time. We measure time in certain ways, but time itself is the ability that things have to change. That's a unique power of the Paramesh, is the ability to change things. So what happens is the Purusha, using Kala, changes Pradhan. The people, the persons, you and I, using our efforts, get enabled by time, make changes in the world. And hence we create so many varieties of things from one source. Ek Atmanam Ashesh Dehinam. And doing this, we dvasta guna pravaham, we manifest the gunas, and we also dissipate the gunas. Atmaika bhavena bhajadhamada. And then this is actually a separate statement. So is that clear? The Supreme Master Parameshwara is one being, Ekatma, but the example of the sun's relationship to rain, light, and shadows shows that singular beings manifest plural aspects of themselves. The three aspects of the Supreme Master identified here are persons, Purusha, time, Kala, and the creative substrate, Pradhana. Persons are the Jiva Atmas, you and I. Time is the force which allows persons to generate changes in their world, and persons exert efforts which over time cause change and evolution in the substrate of creation, Pradhana, also known as Prakriti. Makes sense? Is it clear? The next thing that he says is Bhajan Atmaika Bhavena Bhajadhamada. Knowing him, the Parameshwar, to be one with your truest self, you should adore him directly and without reservation. The self-interest is the natural reflexive. Everybody knows that self-interest is the most important thing. People will tell you it's not good, blah, 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 but it's just a lie. Everybody knows self-preservation, self-interest is what you do. The problem is how we understand the definition of self. If we understand the self as something that has nothing to do with our family, then the way that we act for our self-interest will not benefit our family at all. It's not that you can get a being to not have self-interest. To be a self means to have self-interest. But how you can comprehend the self is the important part. If you comprehend yourself as a part of a marriage, then all of your self-interest will express itself in ways that benefit the marriage, because the marriage is part of you. If you comprehend yourself as a part of a family, then your self-interest will benefit the family. If you comprehend yourself as part of a community, then your self-interest will naturally benefit the community. Ultimately, if you comprehend yourself as a manifestation of Hari, then your activities will be directed towards benefiting Hari, and you'll benefit because you're part of Hari. So he says, Atmaika bhavena, having the bhava or the mood that Atmaika, that you have one self, one soul. Hari and the self are one soul. Atmaika bhavena bhajadtam. Then with that mood, you should worship. Adha, directly, not indirectly. Many times people will say, it's all one soul, these things are all God, so let me worship anything. It doesn't work that way. The mouth is the mouth. The hand and the mouth are connected. But the mouth is the mouth. You feed the hand. You don't feed the hand. You feed the mouth. And then the hand benefits. The root is the root. The leaves are the leaves. They're part of one tree. But you don't water the leaf. You water the root. So that's why he's saying, Adha, you should, knowing that you're one with Hari, but there's some distinction in that you are the extension and he's the root. Therefore, you should direct your attentions to him. That's Narada's explanation of self-realization. How to realize the self. Let me see if any questions popped up. No questions. Hello, Alf. Now, let's go and look at the next one. Now, the question is, all right, so Narada says, look, really, self-interest is natural, and it's the most undeniable thing. So if you just understand the true self, then you'll be fine. The true self, he explains, is Hari. So you should make your endeavors please Hari. Now, the question is, how? So he's going to now explain that. Boop, boop. We've suddenly switched into October. It's November now. Get with it. But we had here, at least where I live, we had summer all the way up till mid-October. And then we suddenly switched into October. And it's a little difficult on the human body to switch gears so fast. So people such as myself are going under the weather a bit frequently. All right, so now the 19th text. Dayaya sarvabhuteshu. How do you worship Hari? It is related to all of Hari's manifestations. How do you take care of a tree? Yes, you water the root, but what, do you burn the branches? You take care of the branches and the leaves too. So this is what Dayaya Sarvabhuteshu means. Sarvabhuteshu means all of the manifestations, all of the creatures, all of the people. Dayaya, be kind to them. Be nice to them, be good to them. Dayaya Sarvabhuteshu santushtya yena kenava. And as for yourself, be satisfied. Somehow or other. Santushtya yena kenava. Sarvendriyo pashantyacha. That will chill you out. Tushtantyashu Janardana. And this will please Janardana. So this is interesting. He says, how would you worship the source of all beings? He says, Janardana, which means the source of all beings, can be adored by pacifying one's own senses. Sarv Indriya Upashantya. Upashanti. It is impossible to actually pacify desire. If you could pacify desire, then desire would be boring. Desire is always the motivating factor. If you could actually fulfill it and pacify it, then you would never have more, and then you would have nothing else to do. It would be like a game that you finish. You don't play it anymore. So the very nature of desire is that it's insatiable, but you can upashanti. You can actually get the feeling of satisfaction without extinguishing it. So he says, Sarvendriya upashantyacha. Indriya is the senses, all the senses. Upashanti. So first of all, since you're part of Hari, take care of yourself. placate your senses. Don't exaggerate your senses. There's a difference. If we think that the sensual manifestation of ourself is the root of ourself, that's not going to be good. That's like mistaking a leaf for a root. The sensual manifestation of the self, which is the body, is a extension of the self. So take care of it as far as you can. Upashantya. Don't exaggerate the needs of it. Shanti does not mean to cater to or dedicate yourself to, but it means to pacify. So your senses want a cupcake, so give it a cupcake. So eat a cupcake. But don't, make your senses want more than a cupcake. Just give it a cupcake, make it happy, and focus on something else. This is his advice as far as taking care of the basic sensual needs. Sarvendriyopashantyacha. Santushtya yena kena va. What about the part that said you can't get? You want a cupcake and there's no cupcake in the house. Now, this is where it gets exaggerated or not. If it's not easy to satisfy the senses, then just try to be satisfied anyway. That's exactly what it's saying. Santushtya means satisfaction. Generally, you'll get satisfaction. If you want a cupcake, you find a cupcake, you eat a cupcake, then you get santusht. Even in Bengal, when you're done eating a meal, you say, Sampurn santusht hai, or something. Something like that. Like after eating, you say santushta. So usually you get santushti, which means like satisfied, after you fulfill some desire. But actually, you don't even need to fulfill the desire to get satisfaction. You can let go of the desire and get satisfaction. Big news alert. It actually works. So when the desire is difficult to fulfill, then don't cause alarm and emergency in your life. That's not shanti. That's not peace. If in the case where you can't fulfill desire, then let it go. Let it go. Be the snow princess. What's her name? In Frozen. Not Zelda. Elsa. Santushtya yena kenava. Somehow or other. Just focus on something else and just be satisfied. What should you actually focus on? Daya sarvabhuteshu. That's how to please Hari when you're not in a frame of reality where you're directly interacting with Hari. We're not currently in a perceptive state where we are actually directly experiencing Hari. We're only seeing the roots. We're not seeing the roots. We're only seeing the branches and the leaves. So he's explaining how to take care of the branches and the leaves in a way that will make you come into the frame of reality where you can interact with the root. So what he's saying is the source of all beings can be adored by pacifying one's own senses. This can be done by using them to do compassionate things for all beings and trying to be content with whatever does or doesn't happen. Pacifying one's own senses is done by using them, daya sarvabhuteshu, to do good stuff for people. It will pacify the senses. It keeps them active. They complain if they're inactive. Everybody gets bored. If your senses are inactive, they'll complain. So engage them in doing good things, things which benefit people. Daya sarvabhuteshu. And then who cares if they like you for it or dislike you for it? Who cares if it works or if it doesn't work? Just try your best. Santushta yena kena va. That will cause sarva indriya upashantya. And that causes, when your senses are pacified, then Janardana feels tushti. He feels satisfied. So people have this idea, I've hear this a lot, well, God and I are the same. So if I eat a cupcake, it's devotion to God. It is sort of. It's the beginning. But don't exaggerate the needs of the external things. Actually, it's better not to focus on pleasing yourself, but to please others and be satisfied with whatever results. That will put you less in the lust and selfish frame of mind and more in the love selfless frame of mind. The love selfless frame of mind is the frame of mind which we can perceive Hari. The lust selfish frame of mind is the frame of mind where the self stands in front of Hari and eclipses. Any questions? Elsa. Anil asks, can we have anything close to contacting Hari? Yeah, why not? If you touch a tree, are you close to touching the roots? Yes. So just be aware of that. That Daya Sarvabhutishu, if you're taking care of your daughter, if you're taking care of your son, if you're taking care of your spouse, if you're taking care of your neighbor, if you're taking care of your parents, just be aware that they're branches of the root from Hari. That will put you into the right frame of mind. That will lead you to more direct experience. Okay. That's close. How can you let go of desire, Gladys? Yes, you don't. Like I say, you can't let go of desire. Desire is good. Desire motivates action. Action is good. You don't want to let go of desire. You want to make the desire good desire, profitable desire, beneficial desire. It's all desire is always based on self-service. So that's also fine. You just want to have the correct definition of the self. You don't need to let go of desire. It's just impossible. If you let go of desire, the only way you can possibly do that is to erase yourself. Because to exist and to experience is concomitant with having desire. Just as the sun is concomitant with sunlight, desire is concomitant with consciousness. So don't try to erase desire unless you think it's really cool to commit suicide, because that's what you'll be doing. And not just in a temporary sense, but in a permanent sense. Try to make desire something fruitful by having the correct understanding of self. Go with the flow is not really the point. Rewind, I think, if you think that's the point. Don't be owned by your senses and mind. Own them. Yeah. All right, so we're going to continue to the next of Narada's instructions here. Now he says, Apahata. How do you say this? Hang on, I'm going to focus on this. Okay, now he's going to describe stage 2. So far he described stage 1, how you practice, how you adore Hari, how you worship God. It's by being compassionate, doing activities, desiring the benefit of others, and being satisfied with whatever the result is. That gives you peace. Now he's going to explain the result of peace. Apahata sakala shanal amalatmana. That's a hard word. It's really long. Apahata sakalai shana malatmani aviratam edita bhavanopahuta nijajana vashagatvam atmanoyam nasarati chidravat akshara satamhi. Let me see if I can actually figure this out. Apahata sakalai shana malatmani. That's kind of cool. Apahata sakalai shana malatmani aviratam edita bhavano pahuta nijajana vashagatvamat manoyam nasarati chidravat akshara satamhi. Really, that's a cool cadence, tempo. And there's a lot more questions, so I should pay attention. Aparna says, many texts, including Mahabharata, say desire is the root of all problems. No, Buddhists say desire is the root of problems. Hindus never say this. Maybe the bridge between Hinduism and Buddhism, which is monism, maybe they flirt with the idea. But desire is not the root of the problem. Ignorance is the root of the problem. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of self. When there's ignorance of self, then the desire will be useless. It will cause bad outcomes because it won't be able to serve the self. How does desire relate to attachment is another question. It's the same, isn't it? You become attached to the thing which fulfills your desire. I think desire is the basis for attachment. Ayush, it feels like Bhajate is propelled by the Kriya Shakti of Kala. Is Rajas? So it's like using Rajas for the Sattva purposes? No, in that section, he's not explaining how you worship. He's explaining the relationship between the one being and the many beings. The relationship of the one being and the many beings involves Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva. Just as the sun can create darkness, clouds, and light, and it can create night, it can create day, and it can create twilight, it can create clouds and rain, etc. So, yeah. Bhajate is not propelled by Kriya Shakti of Kala. Bhajate is done by bhava, by feeling. Anil asks, how should one deal with frustrated desires? Your desires are useless anyway. Why should you waste time being frustrated about them? You don't have an accurate concept of the self. So even if you fulfill your desire, it's just going to be nonsense. So just let go of your frustrated desire. You don't even need that crap. But you need frustrated desire and non-frustrated desire are both useless when there's ignorance of the self. What do you get by fulfilling your desire and unfrustrating your desire? Nothing, absolutely nothing. 5 milliseconds of peace. So just let go of your frustrated desires. You don't need it in the first place. It was a dumb idea that you needed this in the first place. Mary, how can one find a balance where you give an appropriate amount of yourself but not too much? Well, allowing people to walk on you is not considered low self-esteem and not particularly healthy. Do you think that it is good to enable somebody to commit a crime? In fact, I will go to jail. I could go to jail if I drive somebody to a bank so they can rob the bank, right? I could also go to jail. So do you think it's good to let people do bad things to you? Is it good for them? Also, by not only does it harm yourself, but by driving the person to rob the bank, that person gets arrested and goes to jail. Great, you did a nice favor for your friend. You got them put in jail. So do you think that it's good to let people mistreat you? That's a mistake. If you actually care about people, you will not let them mistreat you. Okay, we'll go on then. Oh, back to this. Apahata sakalai shana malat mani. That cannot be right, actually. Hang on. Apahata sakalai shana malat man Apahata sakalai shana malatman aviratame dita bhavano pahuta nija janavasavat tvamad manoyam nasarati chidravad akshara satam. He. What does it mean? Here we're at the second stage. Thus, diffusing all other passions, the pure self can then seek the infallible with ever-increasing evocative emotion. So what happens is you pacify your own senses. It diffuses your passions. Pacification makes things less intense. When the passions of the sensual world decrease, passion doesn't go away. It directs itself towards something more fundamental, towards something more rooted. It directs itself more towards the inner self and towards Hari. So he says, by thus diffusing all other passions, the pure self can then seek the infallible with ever-increasing evocative emotion. Then he says, Nija Janavasa Gatvamapanolyan, which is a beautiful thing. He says, submitting himself to the wishes of those who are his, he never leaves them, like space never leaves any other element. So the initial stage of sadhana or practice of worship, etc., was described in Dayaya Sarvabhuteshu, being compassionate, acting out of compassion towards all people, and thereby pacifying one's desires. As the desires become pacified, the passions turn inward. As they turn inward, one seeks Hari with more increasing fervor, need, actual emotion, not intellectual maybes. And then as Hari is now, his personality is described, he is very indebted. This is even relevant to understanding Shravana Nakshatra. Vishnu is very indebted to people. Any forwardness towards him, he feels grateful for. He's a very grateful fellow. So he actually is Nija Jana Vasha Gatvam. He puts himself under the control of the people who put themselves under his control. Submitting himself to the wishes of those who are his. So as the soul starts to seek him with passion, he starts to pull the soul with passion towards him. And put himself into the control of the soul. Then, in that state, Nasarati Chidravat, he never separates. Akshar Satamhi, just like space never separates from things. So this is also worthy of a footnote. All physical elements are evolutes from space and are contained within space and contain space within them. Okay? So for example, air is the evolute from space. It's when the sound vibrates in space, it creates air. Air is the movement in space, movable space. That's what it is as an element amongst the five elements. So air will always be contained within space. You can't locate air outside of space. It's contained within space. And space will always be within air. There's space inside air. You can put things in it. Similarly, from air comes fire, because the friction of the movement of space creates heat. Fire will exist within air, and air exists within space. Space exists within air, and space exists within fire. This is the relationship between Hari and self. The person who gets connected with Hari and gets fully cognizant of that inseparability. All physical elements are evolutes from space and are contained within space and contain space within them. The Supreme and the devotee realize that they have the same inseparable relationship. So there he's explained how to worship. It's with bhav. You worship with bhava, which means you're feeling your attention, your desire. Now, the next thing he's going to explain is how not to worship, what is not necessary, or what it would be distracting. Is astrology a map to understand Hari? It's like if I have a totally modern GPS and I also have like an ancient scroll with somebody's drawing of a map, and you say, should I use that scroll? Like the GPS is the Bhagavatam, the Puranas, the Vedas. The astrology is like the scroll. If you have the guidance of the Bhagavatam, then you can use astrology to understand God. Just astrology, most people are not understanding God using it. Now he says how not to worship. He says, Nabhajati kumanishinam saijyam hariradhanatma dano priyo rasagya shruta dhanakula karmanam madairye vidadati papam akinchaneshu satsu. This is very cool. He says Hari is rasagya. What does rasagya mean? If there are any artists out there, you know what rasa is. Rasa is the essence of art. Rasa is the essence of beauty. Rasa is the essence of enjoyment. The artist is the chef of rasa. They try to produce rasa for the audience. If somebody's called rasagya, it means they're a connoisseur. They have high taste. Hari is rasagya, Narada Muni says. So, worshipping Hari is not simple. It's like playing music for a person that really is into music. So he says, because he's rasagya, there's a lot of worship which is not going to work. The basis of it all is kumanishinam. If your heart, your manas, is crooked, then no matter what else you do, it's not going to please the rasagya, the person who's a connoisseur. You'll find this even in music, dance, etc. People that actually know music and dance, they know what makes a good dancer and a good musician is the heart, the expressiveness of the person. People that don't know anything about music and dance, they think that you have to practice your scales, practice your stretches. That's incidental skill. But what really makes a good artist is the heart. Similarly, what really makes a good lover is the heart, not the skill. The skill will come as a result of the heart being good. So similarly, Hari is not worshipped by external things. Hari is worshipped by the bhava, the feeling, the emotion. That's the only thing which you actually possess. In the first place is your consciousness. So a placement of your consciousness is your bhava. That's all that you can actually offer, because that's all that you are. Nabhajati kumanisham saijyam harir adanat madano priyorusakya. So Shruta Dhana Kula Karmanam Madarye. It's not going to be worshipped by Shruta, Dhana, Kula, or Karma. Those things are just madai. They just intoxicate. They're just stupid. They're just distractions. We cannot adore the source of all by any amount of Shruta, learning, wealth, Dhana, sophistication, Kula, or efforts, karma, external efforts. Such things make people proud and pompous, madai and kumanisha, and derisive towards good people, satsu. They become derisive, papam, to satsu, to good people who do not possess such things. Hari, who knows what is truly enjoyable, rasagya, is interested only in those who have nothing to give except their very self. That might be the next line. Nabhajati. Okay, you got it? Next. Shriyam anucharatim tad artinascha dvipadapatin vibudhangscha yat swapurna nabajati nijjiprta vargatantra khatamamum udvisrajet puman kritagya. Rare sound here in Japan. Shriyam anucharitim tad artinascha dvipadapatin vibudhams Chayat Swapurna Navajati Nijabritya Vargatantra Katamamum Udvisrajet Puman Kritagya. What does it mean? He is complete in and of himself. Swapurna. You know the famous saying, what do you get a guy that has everything? That's the real problem here when you're talking about worshiping God. What do you give him? It's easy to make my daughter happy. All I have to do is give her a small amount of money and she's happy because she has no money. Because she's a kid. How do you make God happy? He's got everything already. There's one thing he doesn't have, which is you, your attention. That's the most important thing. He is complete in and of himself, Swapurna. Shri, the goddess of fortune, the goddess of all wealth, follows him around. Shriyam anucharitam tadartinascha. Shri, the goddess of fortune, the goddess of wealth, all of the wealth, beauty, everything, knowledge, intelligence, everything, all the wealths in this goddess, personified as this goddess, are anucharita tadartinas, just following him around, trying to do something for him. So why should he care for the gods, anything that the gods vibhudis, or the two-footed masters, dvipadapati, that's the humans, who follow her around. Dvipadapatin vibhudams chayat. So just think of it as the goddess of fortune is following Vishnu all around, and then all these human beings and gods are trying to follow the goddess of fortune. Why should he care about them when he's got her? He doesn't need gold. He doesn't need money. He doesn't need fancy food. He's got enough of that. What he needs is your attention and your knowledge, your awareness of him. Na bhajati nijabritya varga tantra. The final thing he says, yet he makes himself dependent on those who are dependent on him. Even though he's Swapurna and he has Shriya following him around, he makes himself a Britya, a servant to his Britya, to his servant. Now Nara's going to say, who would not love this guy? The person who makes himself a servant to his own servant. Who would not love that guy? The guy who has everything but only wants your attention. That is an adorable person. So Narada says, Katamam utsrujet puman kritagya. Anybody who knows, who's kritagya, Hari is rasagya, but at least you could be kritagya, which means you know how things work. If you're actually kritagya and you know how things work, why would you udvishrajet? Why would you ignore or give up or disregard or discount that person? Why? If you know how things work, then you know that this is the best person. The person who does not need your money, the person who doesn't need your strength, the person who doesn't need your energy and your time, the person who just wants your love. Doesn't even need your love, just wants your love. And who else could it be? Nobody else can do that. You're asking everybody else in the world to do that for you. That's not fair. You can't ask me to be that person for you. You can't ask your boyfriend to be that person for you. You can't ask your girlfriend to be that person because we cannot do it. We're not Swapurna. We're not Swatantra. It's not fair to us. It's fair to him. Now, Maitreya concludes the tale. So here I think the Sanskrit is super simple, nothing particularly important. So now the tale is concluded. That's the end. Narada's final statement to the Pracetas. Then Maitreya tells Vidura, after explaining this to the Pracetas and discussing other things about Bhagavan, Anyascha Bhagavat Katha, the sage born from Brahma departed to Brahma's realm. So that's Narada Muni. He's a child, asexual child of Brahma. Brahma engineered him out of materials, along with several others. So after speaking to the Pracetas, he went back home, which is Brahmalok. They too, this is totally bad grammar, spelled too wrong. They too soon departed, for Narada's descriptions of Bhagavan dissipated all their imperfections, and they attained the realm of the Hari they had heard about. There's an important point in here. So, first of all, what happened after this whole thing was done? Narada left, and guess what? The Pracetas left pretty soon too, because Narada went back to Brahmaloka, but the Pracetas, they just got enlightened by Narada. Applying their knowledge, applying what they heard from Narada, they very quickly departed from the extrinsic world. And they went to the realm of Hari that they had heard about. Is an important point. The sadhana that you practice will determine the sadhya that you attain, or the siddhi that you attain. If you practice to be a ballerina, you'll become a ballerina. If you practice to become a samurai, you'll become a samurai. So similarly, the way that you hear about Hari and the way that you cultivate, you practicing your attention on Hari, will be the way that you realize Hari. Which is important. If you have a desire to understand Hari in a certain way and experience Hari in a certain way, you better hear about Hari in that way, from people who understand them in that way, and practice in a way that's conducive to that. It's not that by practicing from a great distance, worshiping in a big church or something, that you're going to achieve some kind of intimate, personal relationship with Hari. So, Narada left, Pracetas disappear. Then Maitreya says, Vidura, now I've explained everything you asked about regarding the discussions of Hari between Narada and the Pracetas. Now Shukadev speaks. Shukadev says to Parikshit, O spiritualist among kings, my description of the descendants of Uttanapad is complete. So this whole story is coming as a result of describing the genealogy or the family tree descending from Uttanapada. Uttanapada was Dhruva's son, I think. We'll have to go back and figure that out. That's what we'll do next. We'll go back over the fourth canto one more time. O spiritualists among kings, my description of the descendants of Uttanapada is complete. As for the Pracetas' child, Priyavrata, Narada also instructed him about how to comprehend the self. Thus, after enjoying his earthly rule, he divided his kingdom amongst his children and attained the most glorious position. When Vidura heard Maitreya's explanations and clear descriptions of the unconquerable, his emotions swelled, pushing a flood of tears from his eyes while he clasped Maitreya's feet to his head while imagining them to be the feet of Hari. This is also important. How to respect people. He clasped Maitreya's feet to his head while imagining them to be the feet of Hari, to treat people well because they are extensions of Hari, and to be remembering Hari while treating them in that way, while treating them respectfully or taking care of them, etc. Vidura explained, O great compassionate yogi, today you showed me the other side of darkness, where Hari enjoys those who cherish nothing else. This is also important because the way it's worded here is that Hari achieves something. It wasn't worded. It's worded that it goes both ways, that the soul achieves Hari. But that goes without saying, it's obvious. But the way that it was worded highlights the fact that Hari actually also achieves the soul. The soul is a treasure. a beautiful treasure, and Hari achieves it. Hari gets it, and that delights Hari. O great compassionate yogi, today you showed me the other side of darkness, where Hari enjoys those who cherish nothing else. Humbly obtaining Maitreya's permission, Vidura departed joyfully to see his family in the city of elephants. The city of elephants is Hastinapur, the ancient capital of Bharatavarsha, which is basically now the same capital, New Delhi, of India. So that's also interesting. What did Vidura do after hearing this stuff? Why is he out here talking to Maitreya in the first place? Because bad stuff was going on with his family. It was a fratricidal war, and he didn't want to have anything to do with it. So he went on a pilgrimage. During the whole war, he's out elsewhere. And he met Uddhava, and then Uddhava said, go talk to Maitreya. I can't talk to you right now. I'm in too much emotional distress. But Maitreya was with me when Krishna was talking to me before he left. So anything I know, he knows. So although I can't deal with you right now, but he can. So Vidura went to talk to Maitreya. Then they had this whole conversation, and Maitreya tells them all about Dhruva, etc., etc., Dhruva's kids, Uttanapad, all the way down to Barishat, tells them the story of the citizen, tells them the story of the Pracetas, and now it's done, right? So all the time that Vidura was hearing Maitreya, now after that he figures this war must be done. And so in a happy mood, after having all this knowledge, he leaves to go see his family. That was the instruction, actually, that Narada gave to the Pracetas. Dayaya sarva bhuteshu. Do good things for people. So Vidura is going to go and try to help his brother now, Dhritarashtra, whom he calculates and foresees is going to be in bad case because he's on the negative side of the bad stuff. So that's also interesting. Vidura applies the knowledge and goes and takes care of the people in his family. And then the final statement in the fourth canto, O king, Shukdev tells Parikshit, one who hears this tale of kings. So the whole thing is a story of kings, actually. This whole canto is stories of kings doing great spiritual things. And that's very interesting. Kings don't usually do great spiritual things. Kings usually fight wars and conquer lands and maybe, impart some kind of social reform as the best thing they can do. But these are outstanding tales because they're the tales of these kings who did amazing spiritual things. O king, one who hears this tale of kings, or I could probably say these tales of kings, who give themselves to Hari, achieve similar wealth, fame, fortune, and the most glorious position. You are what you eat, but actually everything that goes into you is what you become. So more important than your mouth is your ears. It's the most important thing that affects what you are and how you feel is what you hear. So if you hear tales of great kings doing spiritual things, then you become like that. Any questions? That's the end of the fourth canto. What we will do for the next few weeks is go through the whole fourth canto again before we move on to the fifth. But obviously not at the same pace, much faster pace, just to review the whole thing. So we have that to look forward to. Let's see. Thank you, Jehu. Let's see, anything here to address? Thank you, Tata. Oh, this is Wang. So I feel like I'm in the Squid Games now. I just got 10,000 Wang. Thank you, Tata. Hey, Del, thank you. Happy Diwali to you also. Bardo has a weird question. All live as usual, Bardo. All living and non-living entities are expressions of Hari. Why bow only to Jivas? What are you talking about? Jivas are all of the living and non-living entities. All right, guys. Why doesn't humanity compliment Hari when Hari can easily give up everything for our attention? That's Arjuna's question. It's because people have not no information to this effect. People don't know about it. Okay, see you guys later.